When a crime is committed, the perpetrator inevitably leaves behind something, a description, DNA, or physical evidence. This is the criminal's print on the scene. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, episode 16.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast. This is Zach.
And I'm your co-host, Jaron.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Jaron, how was your week this week?
It was busy. How about you?
I second that. Busy, but it was a good week. So today we're going to continue with our discussion on Emanuela Orlandi. And Jaron, why don't you give us kind of a recap of what we talked about in part one?
So a quick summary. Emanuela lived in the Vatican City with both of her parents, and she was the fourth of 5 children. She was 15 years old when she disappeared. She disappeared after going to a flute lesson and never returning home. Her last known location was a bus stop. There are multiple accounts. One is that she got into a green BMW that we spoke quite extensively of in part 1. And another account is that she got on the bus. But what we do know is that she spoke to a red-haired woman, and her last known location was that bus stop. Her parents searched really hard for her, and they put out tons of flyers throughout the city with their home phone number, in fact.
And this is an interesting twist because we know a lot of different people or organizations tried taking credit for it and actually called the home number.
They got calls from Mario and Luigi, and not the Nintendo ones. Mario and Pierre Luigi is actually more proper. And there has been just tons of different accounts. Pierre Luigi and Mario's accounts basically say that she's going by another name, Barbara, and that she ran away. Then things got really crazy. There's a terrorist organization claiming they have her and that they want a prisoner released for her release.
Mehmet Ali Atka.
They give an ultimatum, and that ultimatum is release Mehmet by the 20th of July, and we will release Emanuela. So in part 1, we reached that ultimatum, and Mehmet was not released, and we will pick up on July 21st.
So on July 21st, 2 identical letters arrived at the ANZA agency, which is an information agency, and also at the Masarega office. And the letters actually came from Frankfurt. They were written in German, and they were postmarked on July 17th. So we also had a possible KGB connection on the first one, where Mehmet claimed that KGB was behind the shooting of John Paul II.
Which, of course, Mehmet was in jail for.
So the letter said, "We again warn the Italian and Vatican authorities. Free Mehmet Ali Atka." So they also add, "Release Sadar, Salibi, and other friends of us immediately. Otherwise, there will be further punitive actions as with Emanuela Orlandi." So this, Jaron, I'm sure you will agree, is the start of many groups claiming responsibility for Emanuela's disappearance.
One we will get into is the possible Frente Turks connection. So on August 4th, a message was received by ANSA again from a group calling themselves the Frente Turks. In poor Italian, it said Emanuela would be executed on October 30th if Atka is not freed by then.
So this is interesting because this is a whole different deadline and it's a different group.
The proof they gave was they claimed in 1974 Emanuela had a crisis from being allergic to milk. They said that her friends are 3 young people with black hair. Wow, that's pretty... Come on, guys.
Yeah, that's pretty stinking vague.
And they claimed that she went to church on April 22nd. They also said that Emanuela had 6 moles on her back and that at 13 and a half she had a nervous crisis.
So Emanuela's mother, Maria, said that she never liked milk, but I don't recall her having any allergic crisis, and that she has 4 or 5 friends here in the Vatican, all with dark hair, and that as a child she was never nervous and therefore had no nervous crisis. Maria also said that I have never counted the moles on her back, but she had a lot.
So basically, these guys are full of crap.
Yeah, these are very loose connections at the best. So, one other detail Maria said was she often went to church, but April 22nd was a Friday, and on that day of the week, she never went to church. Now, it will come out later that this statement by her mother is wrong. It is not accurate, because it came out that Emanuela did attend church on April 22nd, because we know this because she was in the choir.
So perhaps she was thinking church attendance rather than attending in the choir.
I agree.
On August 8th, a second message came from the Fronte Turks into ANSA again. They wanted the Pope to deliver the following message. Ali Akka is a human being, as is Emanuela Orlandi, and should be treated as such. They wanted this message to be read on television.
Goodness gracious, they are all trying to get this Mehmet Ali Atka freed. Holy cow.
But they're not done yet. On August 13th, a third message is received. It said, not publishing the message favors those who want the elimination of Emanuela. Also in the third message, it provides a detail that she had dinner on June 20th at home with close family members.
So once again, I mean, this is certainly possible, but vague in my opinion. So on August 28th, Pope John Paul II prays for Emanuela and Mirella Gregori, who is an Italian girl who had also went missing and was kidnapped on May 7th in Rome. So this is fascinating because you got 2 kidnappings in Rome.
The Pope didn't read the words dictated by this group, but he did mention Atka.
So on September 4th, once again, the American calls the ANSA newsroom in Rome. And the American says they have left a message in a yellow bag inside a rubbish bin, or as we would know, a garbage can, on Port Angelica Street. It had a taped recording, the photocopies of a music page with writing, telephone numbers and addresses of friends of Emanuela, and 4 small mysterious stones. Why in the world would there be 4 small mysterious stones in there?
Very strange. The taped message refutes the communications of the Fronte Turks. It said, by all effects, Operation Agca has finished.
The American, did you get a little butthurt here, my friend?
They're suddenly getting competitive with each other. This is a strange turn.
It seems like the American got a little cranky.
On September 22nd, a 4th message from the Fronte Turks arrives at ANSA. It says, all is not lost. It also provided information about Emanuela that must not be revealed to the press under any pretext. Her family confirms this information is indeed accurate.
So in an interview with Italy's RAI state television, while in prison, Atka told the interviewer that the girl was alive, not in danger, and living in a cloistered convent. He denied any direct knowledge of Emanuela's fate and said that he made, quote, some logical deductions, close quote.
Or made it up. The authorities had no evidence to support these claims, of course, and Atka had previously said that Emanuela had been kidnapped by Bulgarian agents of the Grey Wolves.
It just takes yet another twist.
The Grey Wolves are a Turkish ultra-nationalist, neo-fascist youth organization, which he was a member of. This is really getting just too wild to fit the profile of our podcast, isn't it?
So in a letter published in 2006, Atka claimed that Emanuela and Mirella Gregori keep in mind the girl that was kidnapped from Rome on May 7th, were both abducted as part of a plan to secure his release from prison. He also claimed that both girls were sent to a royal palace in Liechtenstein.
In a 2010 interview by a television station in Turkey, he changed his story once again. He claimed Emanuela was kept as a prisoner by the Vatican and was living in a Central European country as a nun.
Goodness gracious, Atka, what are you going to say next? Holy cow, this guy's changed his story so many times.
He said that she was not allowed to leave the monastery, but that Emanuela's family could see her whenever they wanted. Yeah, why is this story changing this much?
Atka, holy cow, I don't know what in the world's going on in his mind, but in my opinion, the story changing that much is not at all good.
It makes them all seem very illegitimate, of course.
Certainly does. So in 2011, Antonio Mancini implied that the kidnapping of Emanuela was one of a number of strikes against the Vatican by the gang he was a member of.
The gang is the Banda della Maglina. It was an Italian crime organization that's probably pronounced nothing like I just said. He said the gang was trying to force restitution of large amounts of money that they had lent to the Vatican Bank. Her father, remember, did work for the Vatican Bank.
He did. So in 2005, the Italian police got an anonymous tip from a caller who said Emanuela Orlandi was kidnapped as a favor to Cardinal Ugo Poletti, and that the secret to the mystery lies in the tomb in St. Apollero Basilica.
For years, there was a rumor that haunted the Vatican that a young girl was buried alongside the mobster Enrico de Pettis. One of Enrico's mistresses also said that the girl was kidnapped on orders from Paul Marcinkus, an American archbishop who was the president of the Vatican Bank when Emanuela disappeared. She said this in 2008.
The Vatican, of course, said that Enrico was buried alone and that there was no substance to this claim. They knew, though, that the only way to really put the rumor to rest, and we certainly have a lot of rumors, unfortunately, in this case, would be to let them open Enrico's tomb. So the Vatican gave the Italian police permission to exhume the body of Enrico and open the casket. So this occurred on May 14th, 2012. His casket was opened, and they took DNA samples.
They didn't find any clues in his tomb that linked him to Emanuela. So let's get into another theory. This is the Vatican sex scandal theory.
So also in May of 2012, Father Gabriele Amorth, who was 85 years old at the time, said that Emanuela was kidnapped and forced to take part in sex parties. And so Gabriele Amorth was appointed by John Paul II and was the Vatican's chief exorcist.
In other words, he had very high standing in the church. He said this was a crime with a sexual motive. Parties were organized with a Vatican gendarme acting as the recruiter of the girls. He also said the network involved diplomatic personnel from a foreign embassy to the Holy See. I believe Emanuela ended up a victim of this circle. So now we'll get into the current status of the case.
So let's go back a little bit. Holy goodness crap. What in the world? Another theory, Vatican sex theory, thrown into everything else we already have.
We try to generally not get into conspiracy theories, but as we researched this, we found that's really all this case is.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not much else to go off of. So on April 6th, 2012, in a Good Friday sermon, Reverend Renario Cantalamessa made a statement that once again opened the floodgates to rumors.
He advised the congregation to make amends for your sins before dying. He said, "Don't carry your secret to the grave with you." This statement led many to the belief that he was suggesting someone at the Vatican held information about Emanuela's disappearance.
And this had been the rumor for years and years and years, so the floodgates just completely swung open. So Vatican spokesman Federico Lombard issues a statement because of the rumors and said that doubt had been raised as to whether Vatican institutions or personalities truly did everything possible to contribute to the search for the truth about what happened.
He said, quote, "Just give one example. The investigators, and above all, SIDSD, which is an intelligence agency, had access to the Vatican switchboard to hear possible calls from the kidnappers." He also said, "All the Vatican authorities collaborated with commitment and transparency with the Italian authorities to deal with the kidnapping in the first phase and then later in the successive investigations. As far as we know, there is nothing hidden, nor are there secrets in the Vatican to reveal in the subject. To continue to assert it is completely unjustified. Also, we reiterate, yet again, all the material from the Vatican was handed over in its time to investigating magistrates and to police authorities."
So essentially he's saying, hey, we've done everything we can to cooperate, and the Vatican, even though the rumors are out there, has no part of this. So on October 2018, during a renovation work on the Holy See's embassy in Rome, human remains were found. And referring to this find of human remains, the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, said, quote, "Things are done with greater openness and more transparency. We found some remains, and we wanted to know exactly what we were doing, to whom they belonged, and therefore asked Italy for help," close quote. An attorney for the Orlandi family objected to the media's attention over the remains.
They said, "We're still asking ourselves why you'd find some bones and immediately assume they were Emanuela's."
And this will be a trend that continues.
These bones were tested, and in February 2019, the results concluded the remains belonged to a Roman man who died between 190 and 230 AD. In June of 2019, Emanuela's family received an anonymous message directing them to the Vatican's Teutonic Cemetery.
The message said, quote, "Look to where the angel is pointing," close quote. And the cemetery does have a plot with a statue of an angel pointing towards the ground. So this led them to the tombs of Princess Sophia of Hohenlohe, who died in 1836, and to the adjacent tomb of Princess Carlota Federica of Mecklenburg, who died in 1840.
And in June 2019, the Orlandi family got permission from the Vatican to open both tombs. You got to say, at this point, the Vatican really is allowing open access to basically everything for this investigation.
They certainly are. I'm impressed.
When the tombs were opened, Emanuela's brother, Pietro, said, "For the first time, the Vatican admits there may be the possibility of eventually internal responsibility." Remember, there's some loss in translation here. For the first time in 36 years, the Vatican has concretely done something important in the case.
So the brother also said that opening the tombs signals a change of position. He said that when he met with Pope Francis in 2013, the Pope told him that his sister was in heaven and simply left it at that.
That wouldn't really give you any closure at all, would it?
That would not only not give you closure, but it might really annoy you, to say the least.
It very well could make you bitter, yes. When the tombs were opened, they found another mystery. Both of the tombs were empty.
Uh-oh.
according to Alessandro Gissotti, there were no human remains nor urns.
So Princess Sophia's tomb led to a large underground space that was completely empty. The tomb of Princess Carlota had no human remains. Now, the Vatican said that the cemetery had undergone work during the first part of the 19th century, and again in the 1960s and 1970s.
So they said, okay, look, we'll look at the documentation we have regarding these renovations. And on July 13th, 2019, another twist occurred. That's it. The staff was searching other areas and locations where the princess's remains may have been moved to, and the searches were focused on areas adjoining the tombs. They found 2 sets of bones near the tombs of the 2 princesses. This, of course, raised speculation that they could be Emanuela Orlandi, one of them.
It hit the news, it was everywhere, certainly raised a lot of speculation. So, the bones were found in 2 holes carved out of a large stone that was covered by an old pavement stone, a few meters behind the princesses' tombs. Now, this area is technically inside a building of the Teutonic College. After further expansion work on the building actually encroached into the cemetery.
So further inspection of the site revealed 2 ossuaries. An ossuary is a container or room where bones are placed. These ossuaries were placed beneath the floor of an area inside the college closed by a trap door.
So keep in mind here that the Vatican did say, as we talked about before, that renovations were done. And, for example, in the 60s and 70s, and it had been moved. Emanuela went missing in 1983.
So it's the wrong decade to match.
Certainly. So, but to play it safe, the area was sealed off and would be opened again on July 20th, very recently, in the presence of forensic experts. And after this find, Laura Segro, the Orlandi family attorney, said she had been informed of the discovery of the bones and that the family was pleased that the investigation was continuing.
On July 20th, which interestingly, years and years and years before, was the deadline for releasing this terrorist, they opened the trapdoors into the ossuaries. They found thousands of bones and bone fragments. In fact, it was a lot more than they expected. But again, bones are stored in ossuaries, so it's not that strange at all. In fact, it's expected.
And these would have been very ancient bones.
Emanuela's sister, Federica, was there when the ossuaries were opened.
Federica said that, quote, "Obviously, it's an emotional experience because I think my sister's bones could be there, but I won't think about it until we have results," close quote. Portera, the Orlandi's family forensics expert, said, quote, "Thousands of bones have been found. I can't say if it's 1,000 or 2,000, but there are really very many, and so we assume the presence of the remains of a few dozen people."
He also said the bones were found all mixed together and not sorted, and they were all piled up inside the cavity.
Alessandro Giscotti, the Vatican spokesman, said in a statement that a team including Portera and Vatican staff, including its own forensics expert, Giovanni Arcudi, gave the bones a first examination. The forensic investigators said they gave the bones a first examination and that the forensic investigators followed international protocols.
Forensic investigators, of course, use carbon-14 methods to obtain rough estimates of their age.
And this is huge because of the possibility that these are ancient or old bones.
Yeah, basically they would know the difference between bones from the 80s and bones from way, way back.
Alessandro Giscotti, again the Vatican spokesman, responded in an email, and he said that, quote, "It was absolutely normal that in an ossuary there is an elevated number of remains, above all, in an ancient cemetery like the Tatianic. No surprise. And he also said that a large number of bones, since they were old, broke into fragments, many of them tiny, boosting the total number found.
Laura Sigro, the family lawyer, said the bones were gathered into 24 bags sealed. Vatican officials in a statement said that there was no possibility at the moment to predict how long it would take to complete an analysis of the remains. But due to the fact that a lot of the bones were broken into fragments, Zach, do you think that that gives credence to the idea that they're ancient bones?
Personally, I do. I think it adds a lot of credence to what the Vatican is saying. Just my personal opinion. Jaron, here's a question for you. Do you think that a lot of this has been talking about age and ancient bones? Do you think by looking at them, they can get a rough estimate of the age?
You would think that to some degree you could, but I guess a lot of it would really depend on the conditions in this area, just dampness and environmental factors.
Certainly. Very good point. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Pietro Orlandi, who is the brother again. And he has been there and supported searching for his sister since his father, Erkel, died in 2004. I guess you would say he took charge. He has been crushed by her disappearance. In fact, on the day Emanuela disappeared, she asked him to accompany her on the bus to her music class that was just a mile away.
So he had other plans, and in fact it caused an argument between him and his sister. He said, "It's a very painful memory. She insisted I take her, and we rode over it. Then she left, slamming the door. I never thought it'd be the last time I saw her. I've gone over it so many times, telling myself if only I had accompanied her, maybe it wouldn't have happened."
That is absolutely awful that he had to go through that. And I can't even imagine what he has to live with. But we do know that he's given it his absolute all to try to find her. So, as we mentioned, the father had passed away. He takes charge, and he continues to fight for the truth and continues to fight for searches. He personally, I guess you would say, he believes the Catholic Church or the Vatican is holding something back. Maybe information, evidence about Emanuela's case. And he's actually organized a petition online to the world headquarters of the Catholic Church.
The petition was just wanting the church to finally reveal everything they know about the case. He has done everything he can to keep Emanuela's case in the spotlight. When the two princesses' tombs were opened, he said, "Until I am presented with a corpse, it is my duty to look for her and hope she's still alive." He has also said his family's quest for answers has taken them to various torturous paths. They've followed tips, anonymous letters, and reports of sightings. And he says, quote, "I couldn't live with the doubt that I am missing something."
So very admirable how hard he's searching. Good man. So let's talk about conclusions, Jaron. What do you think is the most likely scenario of what happened to Emanuela? Was she possibly kidnapped by the driver of the green BMW that was seen before talking to her and in the area after that had the Avon bag? Is it that possible connection?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I kind of have a hard time believing that, but it is possible. It's as possible as any of these grand conspiracies are anyways.
And it was seen in the area, so that's interesting. Jaron, we know that Mirella Gregori went missing and disappeared just 40 days before Emanuela. Possible serial killer? Could these somehow be related?
Again, it's as possible as anything else. I that's kind of a cop-out of an answer, but there's just so many possibilities, and a lot of them are so outlandish. It's just hard to even develop an opinion. Could she have ran away?
It's certainly possible, but I personally think it's unlikely, in my opinion. She was close to her family. I don't think she ran away.
It also seems unlikely she would invite her brother to go with her and then run away.
Yeah, I agree that she certainly wouldn't have asked him if that was her plan.
So how about the conspiracies that she was being held for ransom, demanding the release of Mahomet?
Oh, goodness, Mr. Akka. There is certainly some intriguing things with this aspect, and there are things that possibly connect it with the tape and whatnot. But as many times as he's changed his story and said that she's alive and she's a nun, goodness gracious, I don't know if I believe a single thing he says at this point.
He definitely doesn't seem to be on the loop if it is them. But I guess possibly it could be agents working, for his cause without his knowledge. There's been rumors of a mafia connection. They were allegedly demanding that the Vatican make good on some outstanding loans. What do you think? Any traction there? I personally don't hold a whole lot of water to this theory, but it's possible. And we talked about the sex scandal theory. How about that one?
My opinion, I don't think it was a sex scandal. I mean, there is some information talking about it. He was the chief exorcist, so he certainly held a high position. But I don't think that the Vatican is involved.
It seems extremely unlikely, I agree.
They've been very willing to... I know the brother says that, there are things like when he met in 2013 with the Pope, and he gave that awful answer and didn't expand whatsoever. There are things that make him look suspicious, but they let him dig up the grave of the mobster Enrico de Pettis. They've let them check the new location of the cemetery. I think they've been more than compliant, and that's not even talking about the original stuff, how they let the investigators help at that point. So that's episode 16 of the Disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi. Thank you very much for listening to us. I hope that, Jaron, we didn't butcher the names too bad.
But we probably did.
I'm sure we did. But
apologies if you know how they're supposed to be said.
Yeah, certainly. We gave it our best shot. Again, please check us out on Twitter at Podcast Criminal. We also have a Facebook page, a group page that we'd love to have you check out. Please tell your friends about us. If you would be so kind, please subscribe on whichever podcast app you listen to and review us. It would be very much appreciated. And again, everybody have an absolutely fantastic day.
And remember, keep your record clean and your prints off the scene.